Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and have a lot more fun. I'm your host, Paul Sanneman. I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors build great teams. My guest today is Jeremiah Gore from Crossroads Coaching. So, Jeremiah, why should this audience listen to you as contractors? What's your
Yeah, for
specialty
sure.
here?
Yeah, first, and thanks, Paul, for having me on. So I've been in the building industry for 20 plus years, both on the sales side and on the operation side, on the production side. And so I've kind of worn all the hats from field up to division management and leadership. So I've kind of done so many of the various jobs that, I'm able to kind of connect what's missing. And what I found missing is several years ago, watching my sales teams get trained, my sales teams kind of continue to elevate their game. We would hand customers off from sales to the next person in line, and that we had built this level of trust, and it had fallen off so greatly to the next person in the process that here years later, I'm sitting on this side of the fence now. I'm a coach and a trainer to companies where we're trying to elevate the rest of that customer experience that they already get from the sales team and kind of say, how do we elevate that and keep that momentum that's been created by sales? How do we carry that through to the end of our journey with that customer? And so that's what I do is I focus on,
So that's a
I
good
do sales
question.
training too, right?
So let's say I've got a roofing company or a housing, whatever I've got, and I got a good sales guy or woman, whatever she is. She sells them and then turns it over to my production manager or some like selections coordinator, somebody who's not the
Yeah.
salesperson. How do you transfer that trust? Because the salesperson's a closer, he knows how to build trust. He gets it, he closes it, gets them committed to the deal. Now they're handed off to the selection coordinator or the project manager. How do you transfer that trust from the salesperson to the next person in line?
Yeah. I think it's a couple things. One, your salesperson most likely set some expectations that we have to fulfill. And that's the bare minimum, right? So if they say we're going to deliver it by the holidays, we have to deliver it by the holidays. But that's not going to gain us anything. That's just maintaining that level of trust. How do we
Mhm.
elevate beyond that is the bigger question there. And then the second part of that is an effective handoff process. So this first person in the chain, we've established a trust with that person, and then we see so many companies that don't have an effective handoff process from that person to the next person. And the best example I can give is we've all experienced somebody like with an IT problem where we call in to something and we're like, hey, I have an issue. And they're like, okay, turn it off and turn it back on again. This is after they've asked for your name, your address, your phone
Right.
number, your vital statistics. And then they're like, okay, well, I can't help your problem. So let me hand you to the next person. And then what does the next person do? Hey, I need your name, number, address, your
Right.
vital statistics, your age,
Right.
all of that information again. Oh, and by the way, first step, I'm going to need you to turn that off and turn it back on again. And you're
Right.
like, and
Come
so
on.
often we see it in companies. We do the same thing. Like we hate it, but our customer who established this relationship with the first person, we don't share any of that information to the next person. So now we're starting over from scratch all again, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for us. And so how do we make an effective handoff process, and then those next people in line have to be trained to be able to say and carry a conversation without throwing it back to the salesperson.
Now, and that goes, I guess you have to have CRM or something to do that, right? So the information is just put down somewhere, right? In
The
some kind
CRM
of,
helps. I think I'm a big fan of technology. I think technology allows us to simplify and expedite, but it doesn't replace the core process. I learned how to build homes off of a paper schedule. And
Mhm.
that knowledge allowed me to be better when it came to electronic scheduling. Today's guys coming out, they're being taught electronic scheduling. If you removed electronic scheduling for 2 weeks, most most of them, their production would be shut down because
Right.
they're not ready for it. I just checked into a hotel. I was in South Carolina and we were trying to check into a hotel. So there was 40 of us. A lot of the company were putting guys up at
Right.
the same hotel. And they showed up at 4 o'clock. I got there a little bit later. They're still waiting on their room at 9:30 p.m. And it's because the
Whoa.
hotel's computer system was down. No one at that hotel had ever checked somebody into a room without their computer system. They didn't know a backup plan. They didn't
Wow.
know a paper system. They didn't have knowledge of the process. They were so dependent upon the tool. So I'm a huge fan of tool. I'm a huge fan of technology, but we need to understand the process that drives it. Absolutely.
So, how do you transfer trust? I mean, trust is built by you do what you say you're going to do. I get it. I mean, and obviously, turn the production manager is going to be there at 3. If he's there at 3:30, it's not a good thing. But how do you transfer the trust and have them trust the company, not just the guy that sold them?
Right. Well, one, if the guy that sold it is saying he's the reason why they're buying, and granted, we know people buy from people, right? People don't buy necessarily just product, but there is a pain point that we're selling to.
Hmm.
We are selling the solution to their pain. We are not selling just the problem. So first, we got to dig the hole with that customer. Better we let them dig that hole and we guide them through that, and then we show them the solution that we have. And so that same process and that ability to know that information. So on our side, we have to share it. On the salesperson, they then have to. So we talk about it in the sense of kind of emotional endorsements. So
Hmm.
you're Paul, you're my customer, and I'm going to say, hey, it's been a great. Here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to give you the next steps, and I'm going to say you're going to be talking to a guy named Kevin. Kevin is fantastic. I've worked with a lot of people, and Kevin is phenomenal at whatever Kevin does. So Kevin's going to take you along on the next part of the step, next part of the journey. And here's what Kevin does so great. So I'm going to give him an emotional endorsement because Kevin's the next person in line.
Right.
So what happens is now, Paul, as the customer, you're going to go to Kevin, and you're already, because you trusted me to buy from me, you're going to trust Kevin more than you would have had I not done the emotional endorsement. And so then part of that handoff externally is for me to do that. Internally, it's to make sure that Kevin now knows everything I know about that customer. And granted, I've spent who knows how long with this person, so I can't share all of it, but I got to share the big stuff, the
Right.
story. Can I share the story of Paul? Can I share Paul's story of why did he buy from us and why did he buy from us now? And if I can
Hmm.
share that to Kevin, now Kevin has that story and he can build on it rather than starting from scratch again. And that's what helps build that trust line all the way through is one, the customer now feels, okay, the company as a whole is connected to my story and my pain, not just the salesperson.
I
So
mean,
I
and
think
I
that's how you
know.
carry trust all the way through.
It's funny. I learned that in one of these, what do you call it, multi-level selling marketing organizations where you have to edify the next person, right? You've
Yeah,
got to make, like you're leaving me, but you're actually better off because this guy's way better than I am, who the next person is, right? So they feel like
right.
they're moving up, not down. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
that is certainly a skill that I would say is lacking in construction companies, which is edifying the person that you're turning it over to.
For sure. And I think part of it's humility, right? Like you've got to be able to kind of self-deprecating, right? You got to be able to say, you know what? I'm not the best at everything. And that's hard for a lot of people in our on our
Right.
side of the fence to do is because generally we got to where we got because we pushed ourselves to be the best at what we were doing.
Right.
But the faster we can acknowledge, hey, this next guy, you're lucky because yeah, I'm limited. This guy's awesome.
I mean,
Um,
you're moving upscale, not downscale, right? By moving to the next scale.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah, you've given a lot of talks to contractors. I know you're a speaker, a well-known speaker. What has been some of your best talks, and what have they been about that really influence contractors?
Yeah. So the first one is just kind of think of it in terms of communication. So if you think of difficult conversations, regardless of maybe it's having to say no, maybe it's a conversation that's just they're just frustrated with your company process or whatever the case may be. The biggest part of handling that difficult conversation, and it's the biggest transformation that we see with, because let's be honest, men dominate our side of the industry.
Right.
And as most men aren't good at empathy, we're just not good
Right.
at connecting to someone
Right.
else's emotions. We barely connect to our own emotions. So if
Right.
you're asking me to connect to somebody else's, we're not real good at it. And so what will happen is, as an industry, we become kind of just not empathetic, and we kind of become process driven. We become very black and white. These are the rules. These are the processes. These are the standards. The
Right.
hard part with that is those can still be the things, but without first introducing empathy in that conversation, it comes off very cold and very much like you don't care about me as a customer. So the biggest part is we start every negative conversation when a customer is frustrated or angry or upset with empathy. And it's shocking how many people will fight me
Well,
on it
now, what's
because they don't
specifics?
understand what
How
you're
do you
talking about.
introduce empathy? What does that look? What do you say? What's empathy look like?
So empathy is basically getting in the boat with them, right? So think of a lady getting on a plane and you're sitting on the plane and you're like, and that lady's got two kids, one under each arm and bags and everything else, right? She's there all by herself. She's got two kids carrying bags, everything else. And as you're sitting in that plane and you're thinking, think back to the Southwest days before they now have reserve seating. And so anybody can sit wherever you want, even if they're not. You're sitting there and you're
And you
like,
go,
oh,
not me,
please,
not me. I hope it's not me,
please, not
right?
me.
That's
Right? That's
right.
the opposite of empathy, right? You're just like, oh, please don't come anywhere near me. And
Right.
then you have the next one, which is kind of like it's the first dip into empathy, which is, man, that's got to be tough, right? Oh, no, I would not want to be her. And then
I
the
did
level
that
of
too because
empathy, if we,
I had my kid was a screaming kid, right? When I was
yeah,
my young kid. And so I totally know how horrible it is. You can't shut him up, right? And
right,
so when somebody gets on a plane with a kid, I go, oh my God. And, I remember what that was like. And it wasn't fun. It was embarrassing. You couldn't
right,
shut him up and that kind of thing, right? So,
for sure, for sure. And so now, if you could be that person that's like, not only can I put myself in those shoes because you've lived it, and so now you
right,
can put there. But you go one step further and go, how can I help you through this situation, and truly feel like you can now, truly feel like what it would be like to be this lady who's literally got her hands full, and say, how can I help you through this? And if we can get to that in these negative conversations, because a lot of the times we don't admit it, but a lot of times our angry customers are angry because of something we've done.
right.
And so
So
if we can
let's
just
get an
step
example. I'm
back a
going to get an
second.
example here, Sherman. So
Yeah,
you come in and I'm going, look at you guys said you would have this done a week ago and it's going to be another 2 weeks. How come you guys can't keep a schedule? I don't get it. I paid to have it done a week ago and you're still working on it. What's going wrong?
right. And Paul, you know what, that frustration you're feeling, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be told one thing and then be given something else, right? Just that little bit, just that little bit is going to cause you to be like, okay, this isn't a fight. Because our natural reaction is either flight or fight, right? We're either gonna
Well,
run away
yeah,
from this
if you would have paid on
or we're
time,
gonna fight.
we don't take responsibility. We go, well, it rained, it was Tuesday, the truck broke down, pick an excuse, right?
Start excuses. Start the excuse
Right,
train, bring it in, right? And then all of a sudden it's like you're not responsible for anything. And
right,
so I think it's the first part is they're walking in assuming it's going to be a fight. They've talked about it. If it's a couple, they've sat in the car and they said, okay, you're going to say this, and I'm going to play good cop, you're going to play bad cop. And then, if it gets out of hand, we say pineapple, we're out, right? We're just going to
right.
walk away. So they've prepared and then they walk in and they're ready for the fight, and you don't give it to them. It's disarming the customer in a way that they're just not ready for. And sometimes it allows us to even own our part in whatever it is that's causing them the angst. And rather than
Mhm.
just always saying, well, you know what, they're just a difficult customer. Are they? Or
Yeah,
did we make them that way?
that's true. So you've given this talk to contractors, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
And have you heard back from some of them that practice this? What kind of results they've gotten from that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, so a couple things. One, it's less kicking the can down the street. So like, a field guy that normally would just say, you know what, I'll have my manager call you. They don't do that as much anymore because now
Mhm.
they're able to kind of handle that conversation on their own. And granted, nobody's perfect the first time to do it, right? We all learn, but we learn by failing forward, not just giving up. So the big one is less escalation of problems, which is probably one of the bigger things. The
Mhm.
second one is, so when we escalate less, the morale of the team increases, and therefore our leaders and our managers are able to focus on proactive rather than reactive, being all day. We're not just reacting to the problems that are being elevated to us. We're able to be proactive in what it is that we're doing. So because of that, we're seeing those two things. The big thing, the other big thing that I do is I don't train the position, I train the person. So it's truly
Okay.
transformational training and the talks that I give because you might be in this role today, but you might be in something else tomorrow. So like I'll give
Right.
homework out. And one of my favorite feedbacks from homework is somebody will take the lesson that we've done, and one of them is don't ask dumb questions. Like if you know the questions, the answer is going to be dumb, don't ask the question. And a good example of that is if you have teenagers in your house and you come home at the end of the day and you go, how was your day? We all know what your teenager's going to say.
Right.
Good, fine, whatever, right? Maybe, or you might just get an eye roll. So it's a dumb question because you know you're going to get a dumb answer. So the homework is go ask it a different way. Go ask this, think of something different. It forces you to get out of that monotony and forces you to say, hey, anything weird happened today? What's the grossest thing you ate today if you ate in the cafeteria? Just ask a different question. It engages them to now actually think of a response. And no matter what they say some version of, oh, and why is that? Or tell me more about that. And so good example was the spouse. This guy went home, did that with his spouse. Needless to say, the long story is 6 months later, after I see him again, he lets me know they were on the verge of divorce. But because of him asking a different question when he walked in the door, and then after she started talking, he said, I want to know more about that. Tell me more about that. And he did that a couple of times. He got to her emotion level. And that's
Yeah,
where
I mean,
we can do
I
the
can
same
relate to
thing with our
that because,
customers.
you don't want to go home. Let's say your wife doesn't sleep well, right? She never sleeps well. And you come in the morning first and say, how'd you sleep? I mean, there's no way to win that
Yeah.
question, right?
No, you just start the whole conversation wrong. Like,
Right.
she's already like, we know it's bad. And now
Right.
you started your conversation with it. Yeah, for sure.
So maybe did you have a dream last night or something other than, you know, how'd you sleep? So when you
Yeah.
train
The big thing
people,
too is just mix it up, right? Just mix it up. The goal is if you're truly trying to engage in that conversation, regardless of if it's your spouse or if it's a customer, your goal is to get to the emotion of the story, not the what. And so often,
and
especially in
how do you
construction, we
tell you
focus
with
on
the
the what.
emotion? How do you tell you with the emotion of the story, not the what?
So it's the well, one, you start the feels will start happening a little bit. It moves away from nuts and bolts and it turns into embarrassment, frustrated, happy. You'll start hearing those emotional words be used
Mhm.
rather than just what words. Nobody. If you ever read a book, like a fiction book, John Grisham, if he only spoke in terms of person, people, people, place,
Mhm.
um, if he only spoke in those terms, nobody would read his books. It would be a very
Right.
boring book. And so we know those words that start drawing out the emotion. The other reason why you know it's going to be different, especially if it's your spouse, is they're going to look at you and go, "What the hell are you doing?" Because they're not used to you asking them those kind of
Right,
questions.
that's true.
They're going to be confused. So
I
yeah, the
guess that's
first time
true.
you try it, you're going to be like, "I listened to this podcast." Like Paul hosts this podcast, I listened to it, and he had this dude on, and he's like, "Hey, don't ask dumb questions." So I'm trying to ask better questions. And then the key is pause and listen and then ask a follow up. Don't start telling about your day yet. Make sure you get to the emotion behind their story. And
Emotion behind the
again,
question.
doesn't matter if it's a spouse or it's a customer, make sure you get to the emotion behind the story. What are you really trying
So
to solve?
I would say the most important thing that a contractor can build with a client is trust. That's the number one, gets them to pay their bills, gets them to refer them people, makes the whole life work a lot better. And I would say the contractors lose trust because they don't know what they're doing. Is that fair?
Right. Absolutely. I look back at it on my side. So I was on the other side of the fence for 20 years, right? Where I was the hiring contractor, hiring
Mhm.
contractors to do work. And I can think like the concrete guys that I had, they're lifelong friends of mine now. We just randomly call each other just to
Mhm.
talk to them because we built that relationship. And relationships are built on trust. And so over 20 years, never had a slab fail. Over 20 years, we had I remember one um, cable pop out and immediately they fixed it. But more than that, they were always there. If I needed them for something, if I called them on something, they were there. That doesn't mean they'd move their schedule around for me, but it meant that no matter what, when I called them, I trusted what they told me because they would follow up and act on it. I trusted them as a resource, as an educational guide for me when it came to anything to do with concrete. And so they're still friends to this day, and I'm not even in the business. But again, it's because
Jeremiah
we
picked a
built such
really
a
good
relationship.
point because you have to depend on your subcontractor to get the job done. That's just the way it is,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And if you haven't built trust with them, obviously they're working on a lot of jobs. They can choose to use your job or another job. They can choose to put the A crew on your job or the B crew. I mean, they got a lot of choices on, are you in their A guys, like they really like him, they get the A crew, or you're like, oh my God, it's him again, I'll give him the C crew and be late. And
For sure.
and that's totally up to the contractor to build that trust and relationships with subs. So I think not only does this apply to customers, but it certainly applies to subcontractors because you've got
Yeah.
to depend on those guys to get the job done.
Yeah, we've got to see our subcontractors as our customers as well.
Right.
Because if you think about it, we want to go hire the best subs that we can hire. At the same time, they want to work for the best companies they can go work for. They don't want to show up to the job site and have it be a disaster, like a complete mess. And it looks like the contractors that were there before them maybe had a party the night before, didn't
Right.
clean up after themselves, and now they're either going to get blamed for it or they're going to be the ones having to clean it up, or there's just no expectations on the job site to keep it clean. So now they're going to walk off the same way.
Right.
And so whether we pay on time, whether we treat them right when it comes to back charges and things like that, all of those things come into play as to, do we get the A crews, but also, do we get taxed by these subcontractors? Because they're going to add a tax. If they're like, hey, look, every time we work for Jeremiah, we're going to show up. It might or might not be ready. There's no porta johns nearby. He yells at us if we use, the toilet it's used for the customer. So we have to walk a mile down the road. And we're lucky if we get paid on a 30-day cycle. Okay, well, guess what happens? The next time the next time they bid one of my jobs, they're going to add the Jeremiah tax to it.
That's right.
And
The
all of a
tariff. It's
sudden now I'm paying a little bit more than I should
right. But it's
because
your
I'm not
fault.
easy to work with.
And so I'm going to look at one more thing. I think the ability to get along and create empathy applies to three groups for sure. One, your customers, absolutely. Two, your subcontractors, and I'm going to add your employees.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about just customer experience in general, the foundation of a good customer experience is the culture of your company. If the
Right,
culture of your company is chaos and it's a complete circus, guess who's going to feel that? Your customers, your vendors, your
right,
subcontractors, all of them, because you don't have your house in order. And so people all the time, well, I do some consulting here and there, and I'll show up, and it'll be like the screening interview, and within 2 hours of being in that company, I'm like, I will not be able to help you until
right.
you decide that we've got to fix internal first. I mean, we could talk about all the stuff we're going to give away to your customers. That's fine. But until you fix your culture of your company, your
Right.
customer experience is going to be rather difficult to achieve. And so
Well, there's
there is
nothing
we've got to
more
get our house in order.
important than building trust and empathy in your culture so you can spread your clients. So, Jeremiah, let's say I'm listening to this podcast and this sounds good to me. How do I connect with you? Like, can you work with my company? How do you work with contractors? What's your business model?
So I do a lot of training. So I'll do field training or leadership training, just depends on the company and kind of their needs. And I don't really do a lot of like just off the shelf training. So we talk and kind of see what the needs are, and then we go from there and create a game plan. So whether that's again in classroom training or leadership training. So that's part one. Part two of that is connecting with me is easy. It's choosecrossroads.com. I've also social media, it's Instagram and LinkedIn. It's just Jeremiah Gore. It's easy to find.
Right.
And I'll post some stuff on there, usually lighthearted. There's enough seriousness
Mhm.
out there in LinkedIn land. So I try to keep it on the lighter side or keep it short. I have ADD. So if you go too long, I'm not really going to pay attention.
I get
So,
it.
for me, it's short clips. I do literally like a thing called a 1 minute huddle. It lasts about a minute.
Cool.
And so, yeah, it's LinkedIn, but choosecrossroads.com kind of outlines some different things we do. But more than that, the bigger takeaway is it's kind of where's the needs of your team, and let's put a game plan together and let's go address it.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeremiah. I appreciate being here because you're addressing, to me, one of the biggest issues in construction that people sort of ignore. It's like, empathy. You're right. We're all being macho. We don't want to show our emotions. It's, what Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, whatever that book was about,
Right.
right?
That's right.
And so, to me, developing empathy, caring, trust within your company and your clients and your subcontractors is going to do more to create you more profitability in your company than anything else you can do.
Absolutely. Communication is key, and without it, that level of trust is going to be difficult to build. coordinate.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate you being here. You've been a great
Absolutely, Paul.
guest.
Appreciate it.